I have finally done it. I have finally finished Bug Fables. It's only been like 6 months since I started it, and I put it off to play other games and do other stuff, and I've just been, slowly, ever so slowly, trudging through it, and I'm finally done. I don't know whether to feel accomplished or to feel ashamed of myself, but maybe a little column A, a little column B, but anyway, what did I think? Bug Fables is good. I had different expectations going into it than what I was actually met with. I was expecting something more akin to Paper Mario. This definitely is not Paper Mario. I mean, of course, there's a lot of similarities. There's, of course, the aesthetic, the turn-based battle system with action commands. That's, very similar. But through much of it, it does a lot to set itself apart, I think. For one, in Paper Mario, you have Mario and various partners. Mario has 2 types of attacks. He's got his jump and hammer. Each one has its own advantages and disadvantages. Jump can hit enemies in the air, in the back line, and the attacks are split into 2 different damage numbers. So let's say an enemy has defense, it's not going to be as good if you're jumping on them, because it's going to take, let's say they just have 1 defense, instead of removing 1 damage, it's going to remove 2 damage because there's 2 bounces. Jumps can also, flip certain enemies, so there's that. Hammer, on the other hand, can only hit the front ground enemy, and it does a flat damage. So if an enemy has defense, it's going to break through that easier because you're only doing 1 damage number instead of splitting it between 2. This, of course, is also not as great if you're trying to do attack boosts, because rather than applying to both bounces of the jump, it's just doing the 1 hammer attack. So it's this like give and take between the 2 attack options that's what's so great about Paper Mario. Then, of course, you have the partners, which add like several other different layers to the game. Is it balanced? I don't know. Probably not. But, it's fun either way. But with Bug Fables, you have something completely different. For one, you only get 3 party members. Ever. There's like a 4th optional like pet party member that you can get, but it's optional. And, that can only attack like the front ground enemy. Ever. But with the other 3 characters, with your 3 main cast characters, they each have very specific types of attacks that apply to specific types of situations. And that's all you get through the whole game. You have Vi, which a friend of mine keeps calling her V, because she's a bee, I'm guessing. But you later find out her whole name is Violet, which, it's not like a huge spoiler, but maybe it's a great character moment. I don't know. I don't consider it a spoiler. So whatever. Her name is Vi. That's what I'm going with. She's got her Beamerang. This game is very pun heavy. Just warning you. It can hit aerial enemies, enemies at the back line, and there's attacks that you can get later on where they do multiple instances of damage. It's kind of like the power bounce, except it doesn't quite apply the same way. Like the action commands aren't the same. But yeah, she can hit aerial enemies, back enemies. An aerial enemy she knocks down. I think that's it. Then you have Kabu, who his attack is like the hammer. You can only hit the front ground enemy, but it also does piercing damage. So it ignores, I think, 1 defense for enemies that he hits, which is pretty good, considering, there's a few enemies with defense in the game, so it's good to have. And, if there's enemies that can be flipped, he flips them. There aren't very many of those in the mid to late game, though, so, that's worth thinking about. But he's also kind of a tank, so, he's got that added benefit. And then there's Leaf, who you get very early on. But he doesn't start out with the first 2, but you get him very early on. And his attacks can hit any ground enemies, but they also do elemental ice damage, which can, be extra powerful against like certain enemies, mostly plant-based ones. And he can also hit enemies that burrow underground as well. Jesus, people above me have got they're like doing a tribal dance or something, or their dogs are running around. I have no idea. But Jesus, hope it's not coming across. Anyway, so those are your 3 main party members. Each of them has, some sort of method to the balance. Each one is better in certain situations. And, depending on how you build your party with the badge equivalents, I think it's fairly balanced. I will point out that I did play the game mostly on hard mode, which is a which is a medal. I'm going to get this terminology all screwy. Hard mode is a medal that you can get very early on. It has a few, it makes things tougher, but it also has a few added bonuses for you. Like you get extra experience when you level up, or not when you level up, but after you finish a battle, you're leveling up experience, you get a little bit more. But enemies do more damage, they have more HP, some of them have extra defense, which kind of sucks. But honestly, I think it provides a really good challenge for the most part, but at certain points of the game, I would say take that off. It's not worth it. It just adds to, just the heartache. Heartache? Headache? I don't know. Whatever. But I played through most of the game on hard mode. It worked. It was significantly challenging. I liked it. Would I maybe go, if I ever went through the game again, would I maybe go not on hard mode? Maybe. But hard mode is really good to have for bosses because you can get special rewards for doing certain bosses on hard mode. Like usually you get some sort of extra medal, and some of them are definitely worth it. And if you don't use hard mode, you would otherwise have to buy them. And it took me like a third to half of the way through the game for me to even figure out how to find them and buy them. It probably shouldn't have been that hard, but maybe I'm just dumb. Anyway, the game is very interesting in the way it progresses. When you start off, it's kind of like, oh, you're adventurers going off on an adventure. To adventure. And it's like, okay, odd. But, the story kind of opens up, I think. And it especially opens up when you get the lore books. Because those have just tons of little tidbits about why are these bugs sentient? Why do these bugs have communities? What are each of the bug kingdoms like? Side note, I found it really weird that they were called kingdoms, despite that all of them were ruled by a queen, except for, I think, one. It could have been called queendoms. I don't know. Maybe that's just me. But yeah, a lot of the lore tidbits were really interesting as you get through the game. But the lore books are optional. I think I only got like half of them, so... And the ones that I found were quite interesting. As far as the combat progressing, that was something else. I was kind of expecting a completely different game going in. I thought, the more I go through the game, the more damage I'm going to get, the more defense or HP I'm going to get. I quickly found out that the level up system is very different, and the numbers for everything, except for the medal points, in this case, all those level up numbers are pretty low. They're really low, actually. HP goes up by 1 at a time for all party members. TP, which is the FP equivalent, goes up by 3 instead of 5. Medal points still goes up by 3, which is... Badge points went up by 3 as well, I think, so it's like, whatever. But yeah, you also don't get attack upgrades unless you find them. And it's not like shine sprites in Thousand Year Door, or like the power-up blocks where you can power up your partner, or like finding the extra boots and the hammers and whatnot. Like, no, there's a small number of very specific items that will boost certain stats. There's one that'll boost HP for one party member, which is like, okay, cool, I guess. There's one that'll increase defense, which I pretty much always use that on Kabu because he's a tank. And then there's, I think they're called power peppers, which are the attack boosts. And over the course of the game, I got 2, I think. And then there's a third you can get post-game for some reason. I found it odd that there's so few attack upgrades, considering you can only use them on one party member at a time. So you get 2. Yeah, it's good to know which party member you're going to use them on. Personally, I should have gone with Vi both times. I went with Kabu once and Vi once, I think. I should not have done that, all things considered, after, going through the game. But, not having attack upgrades and having the enemies slowly get harder and harder, dealing more damage, having more HP, frequently, since I was on hard mode a lot, having, defense, when your entire party members can only do 3 or 2 damage through the whole game if you don't have any sort of other modifiers. Whew! I mean, okay, so your front party member, whoever's in the front, does 3, before defense, and your back 2 party members do 2 damage before defense. And like I said, unless you get the 2 damage upgrade items that I think I found, that's how many I found. Unless you get those, your attack doesn't go up at all, or unless you use metals. Oh man, it was not easy getting through the game. It was very much a challenge, and maybe that's how the balance was supposed to go. It got so hard that in the last section of the game, I was like, enemies have like basic enemies. Some of them have like 30 HP, deal like 4 to 5 damage a piece per attack, and some of them attack multiple times, and it's just not worth it. That's also when I found out there was a level cap, so that's fun. But there are a few, I would say, very decent, very valid strategies to go through the game with. As you go through the game, your party members unlock multiple different attacks. Like, I mean a lot of different attacks. There's so many options. The only problem I found was that I didn't use most of them. I think there were a few attacks that I went through the game not ever using once, which I think the problem was some of them are good, but they have such high team point costs that it's like, they only deal this much damage and they cost this much TP. Is it really worth it though? And much of the time I decided, no, it was not really worth it. So, I mean, if there was one criticism I had, it would be, either lower the TP cost or increase the damage, or I don't know. I feel like there should be something there so that it motivates you more to use more different attacks. But, there were only a set number of attacks that I actually used throughout the game because those were the useful ones. Vi has probably the best solo kill potential. She's got 2 attacks that hit multiple times. They're a lot like the power bounce in Paper Mario. And if you give all the attack upgrades to her, and then you have a few other moves on Leaf that can buff, you can just deal just insane amounts of damage. Like, you can deal probably like 20, if you get enough attack upgrades on her, you can deal like 20 damage in one turn. It's insane. But again, I'm sure that all has something to do with the balance. I think the difficulty, though, is something that made it a bit hard to get through. Again, I might have done it to myself playing on hard mode, but the rewards are so worth it. The character design in this game was very interesting. Sometimes it was very, very strong. A few other times I would say it was a bit weaker. It's very cartoony. So some of the ants, no, well, not some of the ants, some of the bugs in general. A lot of times the ants, but some of the bugs just kind of seemed to really cartoony. They didn't, I don't know, some of them didn't fit together with each other, but, there were other character designs that I thought were really, really strong. And, just the style overall is kind of like children's drawing, like very simple shapes, simple designs for the most part, but again, a few designs very, very strong. And then, you go through the game as well, and you meet more characters, you go to more places. The game really opens up. There's this giant scope of the game, and it's really funny because since they're bugs, you get at one point kind of an overview of the area that you're exploring and what to you seems like this vast grand adventure. It's like, oh, this looks like someone's backyard. You are barely going anywhere. And I love that. I love that sense of scope where it's like, since you're playing as bugs, it's way smaller than the grand adventure you think you're taking. And, of course, it's got the same type of dialogue as Paper Mario's got. It's got a lot of jokes, it's got a lot of humor, a lot of puns, a whole lot of puns. Almost a cringe-inducing amount of puns, but some of them are really strong. But, the dialogue is great. The main characters, meld really well together. Vi's really pushy and greedy, always asking for a reward, making, jokes about everyone else. Kabu's kind of like the straight man. I feel like he was supposed to be kind of the leader character, but I'm not sure if that's what ended up happening. But yeah, he's kind of the noble type, always wanting to do the right thing. And then Leaf is interesting. He's different. I feel like I didn't get quite as much about what Leaf was all about. Although his character does go into very interesting places, especially if you do his side quest. And by the way, two of the three party members have their own side quest. I guess one of them didn't have a side quest because his whole character arc was kind of baked into the game. Kabu's was, but Leaf and Vi, they have side quests that you can do instead of just going through the game. And if you don't go through their stuff, I'm assuming you just don't find out about them. Leaf, you can find out about, why you found him where you found him, why he seems to have traveled through time. And then with Vi, you get kind of a feel for her relationship with her sister, even though they're bees, and so every bee would technically be her sister. But they kind of explain that in the lore books too. Overall, the lore and the story and all that's really great. And the gameplay, while it can be very challenging, especially on hard mode, I'm sure in base game it's fine. I did really like the addition of, rather than just having the block where it's like, oh, you press block and you block 1 damage, or having the super guard like you had in Thousand Year Door where it's like it blocks all damage and counters 1. Instead of that, you just have a block that, I think it blocks 1 or maybe it blocks more, I don't know, but it blocks at least 1. And then if you block close enough, if you do the act command right, like right at the right moment, it blocks even more damage, which is really cool. But yeah, the gameplay's fun. It wasn't quite what I was hoping for, but it was still really good. Overall, I really, really liked the game. I'm glad to have some spiritual successors to Paper Mario coming out. It really makes me feel good. I'm really happy about it. Even if they're not, 100% what I'm hoping for, I live for this. If Nintendo's not going to do it, someone else might as well do it. So, to the creators of Bug Fable, thank you very much. I very much enjoyed your game. Please keep doing what you're doing. I don't know what you plan on doing next, but keep at it. You made a fantastic game. I will keep an eye, and we'll see if I see anything else from you guys, because I would welcome that. I don't expect a sequel, but if you did, I wouldn't be against that. Well, that's the one. I finally finished that one game that I've been trying to finish for like ever. So I hope you enjoyed. Now that I've finally done it, be sure to press all the buttons and have yourself a great day.